On August 19, 2025, a highly contentious Oval Office press conference between President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy exposed deep tensions and alarming shifts in U.S. foreign policy. The event, marked by Trump's erratic statements and apparent alignment with Russian interests, highlighted his pivot away from demanding a ceasefire in the Russia-Ukraine war, a stark reversal from his earlier promises of swift resolution. This article dissects the troubling rhetoric, falsehoods, and policy implications from the press conference, underscoring the broader consequences for American democracy, international relations, and the ongoing war in Ukraine. That the press conference followed a critical summit in Alaska on August 15, 2025, where Trump met with Russian President Vladimir Putin to discuss the Russia-Ukraine war, now in its third year of unrelenting violence. Leading up to the Alaska summit, Trump had repeatedly emphasized the need for an immediate ceasefire, threatening severe consequences if Russia did not comply. However, the summit ended without a ceasefire agreement or tangible progress, with Trump describing it as productive, despite offering no specifics on what was achieved. This lack of clarity set the stage for the August 19th press conference, where Trump's meeting with Zelenskyy was expected to clarify U.S. policy and address the fallout from the Alaska talks. The Oval Office event was Zelenskyy's first visit to the White House since a disastrous February 2025 encounter, where Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance publicly berated the Ukrainian leader for alleged ingratitude. Tensions were already high, fueled by Trump's social media attacks on Zelenskyy and his shifting rhetoric on the war. The press conference, attended by a mix of American and international media, became a platform for Trump to double down on controversial positions, spread falsehoods, and reveal troubling intentions regarding domestic and foreign policy. One of the most shocking moments of the press conference was Trump's dismissal of a ceasefire as a necessary step to end the Russia-Ukraine war. He stated, "I don't think you need a ceasefire. You know, if you look at the 6 deals that I settled this year, they were all at war. I didn't do any ceasefires." This marked a dramatic shift from his pre-Alaska summit stance, where he told reporters on Air Force One, "I want to see a ceasefire rapidly. I'm not going to be happy if it's not today." This pivot aligns closely with Putin's long-standing position that a ceasefire is contingent on addressing Russia's root causes for the conflict, which include demands for Ukraine to cede territory and abandon NATO aspirations. Analysts, including Keir Giles from Chatham House, warned that Trump's adoption of Putin's framework could have disastrous consequences for Ukraine and European security, as it risks legitimizing Russia's territorial claims and undermining Ukraine's sovereignty. Ukrainian officials, including Zelenskyy's advisor, Serhiy Leshchenko, emphasized that a ceasefire must precede negotiations to prevent Russia from exploiting prolonged talks to advance militarily. Trump's claim that he avoided ceasefires in 6 deals he allegedly settled is misleading. PolitiFact reported that while Trump played a role in temporary ceasefires in conflicts like those between Cambodia and Thailand, Israel and Iran, and India and Pakistan, there is little evidence he permanently resolved these conflicts. In some cases, such as Egypt and Ethiopia, no deal was reached, and his involvement in Kosovo-Serbia tensions was minimal. His assertion that he stopped 6 wars exaggerates his diplomatic achievements, ignoring the ongoing nature of these conflicts and the lack of U.S. intervention in some instances. Trump's repeated assertion during the press conference that he ended 6 wars is a cornerstone of his self-styled image as a peacemaker. He referenced conflicts in Cambodia, Thailand, Israel, Iran, India, Pakistan, Democratic Republic of Congo, Rwanda, Serbia, Kosovo, and Egypt, Ethiopia, claiming, "I've stopped 6 wars. I'm averaging about a war a month." However, this narrative crumbles under scrutiny. The India-Pakistan ceasefire, for instance, was agreed upon by the 2 nations' leaders on May 10, 2025, following military strikes over Kashmir, with disputed evidence of U.S. involvement. Indian officials have downplayed Trump's role, and experts like Michael O'Hanlon from the Brookings Institution called his claims major exaggerations or very premature. Similarly, the Democratic Republic of Congo-Rwanda ceasefire is described as temporary and shaky, and no agreement exists between Egypt and Ethiopia. The Serbia-Kosovo situation showed little evidence of an imminent war or significant U.S. mediation. Trump's boasts not only inflate his diplomatic record, but also distract from his failure to make progress on the Russia-Ukraine war, which he promised to resolve within 24 hours of taking office. This gap between rhetoric and reality undermines his credibility and raises questions about his ability to navigate complex international crises. In a particularly inflammatory moment, Trump mocked Zelenskyy over Ukraine's constitutional suspension of presidential elections during wartime. He stated, "So, you say during the war, you can't have elections. So, let me just say 3.5 years from now. So, you mean if we happen to be in a war with somebody, no more elections?" Oh, understood. This comment was a thinly veiled jab at Zelenskyy, whose country has been under martial law since Russia's 2022 invasion, preventing elections to maintain national stability. Trump's remarks suggest a dangerous equivalence, implying that the U.S. could suspend elections under similar circumstances. This rhetoric aligns with his broader attacks on democratic norms, raising alarms among Democrats about his authoritarian tendencies. By mocking Ukraine's wartime measures, Trump trivialized the existential threat facing the country, ignoring the fact that Ukraine's constitution explicitly allows for such suspensions to prioritize national defense. His comments also deflected from his own administration's failure to secure a ceasefire, shifting blame onto Zelenskyy for the war's continuation. Perhaps the most alarming statements from the press conference were Trump's attacks on mail-in voting, which he claimed is corrupt and undermines real democracy. He declared, "We got to stop mail-in voting. If you have mail-in voting, you're not going to have many Democrats get elected." He falsely asserted that the U.S. is just about the only country in the world using mail-in ballots, ignoring that at least 34 countries, including Canada, Germany, and Australia, allow similar systems. Trump's call for an executive order to end mail-in voting, coupled with his claim that paper ballots with watermarks are very sophisticated and more secure, reflects a broader strategy to undermine electoral integrity. His assertion that mail-in ballots lead to massive fraud lacks evidence, as studies have consistently shown voter fraud to be exceedingly rare in the U.S. His focus on eliminating mail-in voting, which Democrats rely on more heavily, suggests an intent to suppress voter turnout in Democratic-leaning areas. A tactic critics argue is designed to rig future elections, including the 2026 midterms. Trump's additional comments about deploying federal troops to Democratic cities and redistricting to disadvantage Democrats further reveal an authoritarian playbook. He claimed, "We're going to do everything possible that we get rid of mail-in ballots," and suggested that paper ballots would yield faster, more secure results. These statements echo his past efforts to challenge the 2020 election results and stoke distrust in electoral processes, a dangerous precedent for a sitting president. Despite the hostile environment, Zelenskyy demonstrated remarkable composure and strength. When confronted with an offensive question from a Fox News reporter about whether he was prepared to keep sending Ukrainian troops to their deaths or redraw the maps, Zelenskyy responded with dignity, "We live under air attacks. Today there have been a lot of attacks and a lot of wounded people, and a child was dead, small one, 1.5 years. We need to stop this war, to stop Russia, and we need support from American European partners." Zelenskyy reiterated Ukraine's support for a diplomatic resolution and openness to a trilateral meeting with Trump and Putin, emphasizing the need for a ceasefire to halt the violence. His response contrasted sharply with Trump's flippant remarks, highlighting the Ukrainian leader's focus on saving lives and preserving national sovereignty. Zelenskyy's presence in the Oval Office, despite Trump's prior social media attacks, underscored his determination to engage diplomatically, even in the face of adversity. Trump's repeated references to Putin during the press conference, including his claim that Putin was expecting my call post-meeting, raised concerns about his alignment with Russian interests. He stated, "I just spoke to President Putin indirectly, and we're going to have a phone call right after these meetings today. If we have a trilateral, there's a good chance of maybe ending the war." This rhetoric suggests a troubling deference to Putin, especially given Trump's pivot away from demanding a ceasefire, which aligns with Russia's strategy of prolonging negotiations to gain battlefield advantages. European leaders and Ukrainian officials expressed dismay at Trump's shift, noting that it undermines the consensus that a ceasefire must precede peace talks to prevent Russia from exploiting delays. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz and French President Emmanuel Macron emphasized the need for a robust Ukrainian army and rejected territorial concessions, highlighting a growing rift between Trump and U.S. allies. Zelenskyy, in posts on X, stressed that a real peace must be achieved, one that will be lasting, not just another pause between Russian invasions. Reflecting Ukraine's fear that Trump's approach could embolden Putin, Trump's press conference was riddled with domestic falsehoods, including claims about Washington, D.C.'s safety and economic vitality. He asserted people that haven't gone out to dinner in Washington, D.C. in 2 years are going out to dinner, and the restaurants the last 2 days were busier than they've been in a long time. This contradicts reports of D.C. restaurants struggling, with many at historic lows due to economic challenges. He further claimed that deploying the National Guard to tourist areas like the Lincoln Memorial had made the city safer, stating, "I walked around yesterday with MTG and not be attacked. The city is safe." However, crime in D.C. is at a 30-year low, and the National Guard's presence has been criticized as targeting low-crime, Democratic-leaning areas rather than high-crime zones. Trump's narrative that Democrats are calling me up to thank him for these measures is baseless, as no evidence supports such claims. These falsehoods serve to bolster his image as a law-and-order president while deflecting from policy failures. The press conference exposed a broader shift in Trump's foreign policy, moving away from traditional U.S. support for democratic allies like Ukraine toward a more conciliatory stance with authoritarian leaders like Putin. His suggestion that Ukraine could end the war by ceding territory, stating, "I think that's true," when asked if Zelenskyy could resolve the conflict by giving up land, ignores Ukraine's constitutional prohibition on territorial concessions and the strategic importance of regions like Donetsk. Trump's reference to NATO, echoing Putin's claim that Ukraine was never allowed to join, further undermines U.S. commitments to its allies. His promise of very good protection for Ukraine lacks specificity and contrasts with European proposals for NATO-style security guarantees, which emphasize maintaining Ukraine's military capacity without territorial concessions. This ambiguity raises fears that Trump may pressure Zelenskyy into accepting unfavorable terms in a potential trilateral meeting, a concern echoed by European diplomats who worry about Russia's demands for Donetsk and neutrality. Trump's attacks on mail-in voting and democratic processes signal a broader assault on electoral integrity, a hallmark of his political strategy. By framing mail-in ballots as a democratic advantage, he seeks to delegitimize future elections, potentially paving the way for challenges to the 2026 midterms or beyond. His claim that paper ballots are more secure ignores the logistical challenges and costs of transitioning to such a system, as well as the proven reliability of mail-in voting when properly administered. The suggestion of suspending elections during wartime, while framed as a jab at Zelenskyy, hints at a willingness to exploit crises to undermine democratic norms. Combined with his calls for redistricting and deploying federal troops to democratic cities, these statements paint a picture of a president intent on consolidating power through voter suppression and intimidation. Democrats must counter this narrative by emphasizing the integrity of U.S. elections and the importance of protecting voting rights for all Americans. Zelenskyy's performance at the press conference was a masterclass in diplomacy under pressure. Despite Trump's provocations and the hostile question from Fox News, he maintained focus on Ukraine's need for international support, stating, "We are strong people, and we supported the idea of the United States to stop this war, to make a diplomatic way of finishing this war." His posts on X following the Alaska summit underscored Ukraine's commitment to a ceasefire and lasting peace, while expressing gratitude for U.S. efforts despite Trump's erratic approach. Zelenskyy's resilience highlights the stakes for Ukraine. which faces daily Russian attacks, including a tragic strike on August 19th that killed a 1.5-year-old child. His call for American and European support underscores the need for a united front against Russian aggression, contrasting with Trump's apparent willingness to accommodate Putin's demands. Democrats should amplify Zelensky's message, advocating for robust military and economic aid to Ukraine to counter Trump's wavering commitment. Trump's complaints about media coverage, claiming that if I got you St. Petersburg and Moscow, they would still say that I did a bad deal, reflect his ongoing battle with the press. This narrative seeks to deflect criticism of his diplomatic failures by portraying the media as biased. However, the media's role in scrutinizing Trump's claims is critical, especially given his history of exaggerating achievements and spreading falsehoods. Outlets like the BBC and Reuters have highlighted the lack of progress in Alaska and the risks of Trump's pivot, providing essential context for the public. Democrats must leverage independent media to fact-check Trump's claims and hold him accountable for misleading statements. By amplifying accurate reporting, they can counter his narrative of victimhood and ensure that voters understand the implications of his foreign and domestic policies. The press conference occurs against a backdrop of heightened global tensions. Trump's claim of brokering an India-Pakistan ceasefire, for instance, is complicated by his administration's imposition of a 25% tariff on Indian goods, citing India's purchase of Russian oil. This move strained U.S.-India relations, with Indian officials expressing frustration over Trump's public claims of mediation in Kashmir. Such actions risk alienating key allies, further isolating the U.S. as Trump pivots toward Russia. Meanwhile, European leaders are stepping up efforts to support Ukraine, with Germany and the EU proposing significant defense funding and sanctions. On Russia, this divergence highlights the need for Democrats to advocate for a foreign policy that strengthens alliances and counters authoritarian aggression, rather than accommodating it.